Okay, we'll start off this afternoon with the Community Services Committee meeting, and I'll turn it over to Director Monteith for that one. Go ahead, please.
And thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1:05 p.m. So I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. First, second, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to the only item on our agenda, which is the quarterly report to the CAO, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So again, second meeting after the end of the second quarter. So we have the activity report for community services. So this is, community services is one of those departments that seems to accumulate responsibilities that don't fit anywhere else. So this one is parks, recreation, trails, transit, cemeteries, facilities, and rural projects. And then under protective services, we have the emergency management responsibility. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Shuttleworth. Mr. Woods is on vacation, and Justin will take us through the Q2 activities and what they plan in Q3.
Excellent, thank you. So through the chair, I will try and be brief. It'll be a little bit on the parks heavy side because you have me, not Mr. Woods today, but I'm happy to try and answer the questions when I'm done. So Q2 for us is a bit of a ramp-up season in parks and recreation as we start up our parks and activate our outdoor spaces. So busy season getting that ramped up. We also begin our budget planning cycle with our Parks and Recreation Commission. So our first iteration of working with them to see usually larger project ambitions, but also service level needs. Some of the bigger project work in Q2, the structural assessment work, the Kaleden Hotel. We installed a new playground in Tulameen at our public space there beside the arena, which is a fantastic new amenity for that community. We took on some Area D community office renovations, so taking on some new buildings. We improved some assets and hopefully have a better customer service face there. We also activated a second physical activity trailer that's based out of the Similkameen, so similar to what we have in the Okanagan. We have one that's focused there. That's a trailer that essentially brings toys to the communities and runs programs and parks or at different community events. And lastly, in Q2, just kind of interest as we worked with Okanagan College and obtained some trail counters. So we installed both magnetic and infrared trail counters at locations on the KVR in Naramata, Kaleden, and OK Falls. So interesting to see what kind of numbers we get back from that. I was out a couple weekends ago on the KVR in Naramata with some family members, and it was exceptionally busy. So that's as much context as we had before. So we'll actually get some numbers to actually use going forward. We're already into Q3. Which is our all hands on deck season. So busy parks. So we are just trying to keep up with the demand of the parks through this time of year. Some of the bigger project work, we're hoping to see some movement on Wharf Park in Naramata, which is a long-standing project to make that park bigger, and lots of works with utilities and Ministry of Transportation to round that out. We'll continue to support the Adria Tunnel reopening works. Again, some continued physical works, but also continued engineering assessments to see what that looks like. And if there's that potential continues to be there to open that asset. Pioneer Parks, Pathways, and Landscaping. Again, this is something that we didn't get to in the spring, but something we're anxious to land in the fall. We've already begun our second round of the commission planning, as I noted. I think lastly, just kind of neat, is our energy and climate resiliency team will continue their Let's Talk Electric Vehicles. So they'll be out. They actually use our new electric utility van that we just took hold of, and they're showcasing that in community events, Asuyas, Penticton, and Tulameen. So you can see them in those communities over the coming weeks. Back to the chair.
Director Monteith.
That'd be me. I'm so used to Mark being the chair. Any questions, Director Holmes?
Thank you. The infrared trail counters, do they count walkers and bikes? And Motorized vehicles, horses, can you distinguish between all these things?
Yeah, it's a little bit cumbersome because neither is perfect. So the infrared counters count every pass. So, if a group's too close together, it won't necessarily count every pass. So it's certainly not perfect. The magnetic counters are different. They're buried in the ground, and we can set the sensors on them to pick up different subtleties of metal. So even a carbon fiber bike, there's enough metal on it that we can count it as it goes past on the trail. So between those two, we'll put them together. There's a little bit of a math, again, not perfect, but it'll give us a much better idea of the use.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Director Monteith?
Yeah.
So just on the recreation part of it, I should mention that our regional recreation manager will be leaving us shortly, and we are looking at structural changes to make sure that we're addressing current interests from the board. So we'll be talking to the rural directors more about that, but that is underway right now.
Thank you. Any other updates or sorry, any other questions? Director Gettens.
Thanks, if I might. Just wondering, Justin, kind of putting you on the spot a little bit. Are there any new grants or anything that you've heard of trickling anywhere for getting more parks work done? Or do you think that Community Futures grant has kind of been the most kind of big one?
Personally, I haven't looked at a bunch. I know our projects guys are a little bit more focused in that, and we have a new system that we work through and kind of that helps us assess and target grants to do that. I know the Community Futures one is one that's been talked about, so it's a matter of prioritizing and seeing what projects are appropriate for those, but I don't have any offhand.
Alrighty, I guess there's no other questions. Oh, Director Roberts.
Thank you. My interpretive dance was not working at first. Interested in regards to, and we've talked before about it, process getting the Similkameen part of the regional district trail, consistent surface, especially in area G going through the village and off to the Red Bridge. Because of course we know we have holdups on the other side in regards to other issues that we're waiting to come to completion, and we know that they're in the process, but how do we get the ball rolling in regards to that part of the regional trail? Thank you.
Mr. Shuttleworth.
Thank you. So our program again is always looking for funding. So whether that be through grant, sometimes projects are funded through gas tax. From a planning perspective, we're in a good spot on that trail. We already know what it'll look like to do it. So at this point in time, through grant funding or project funding through budget, we'll look at ways to do that. And sometimes they'll work in unison. Like I said, I think for us, we're in a good spot. We've already done 2 or 3 grant applications in the past trying to land that. We haven't been successful to date. But I think each time we do those grants, we gain more information and a better basis to move those forward.
Alrighty, last chance for questions. Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn the meeting. First, second, all in favor? Oh, thank you. To the chair.
Thank you, Director Gettens. The next up is the Environment and Infrastructure Committee, and I will go to Director Gettens for that one. Please,
Great,
go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I'll call the meeting to order at 1:14, please. And can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Thanks. Second, all in favor? Any opposed? Perfect. We've got 2 items on the agenda, so I'm just going to refer this over to CAO to introduce the solid waste Q2 report, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this is where we present on solid waste and utilities. And Mr. Reeder is away on vacation at this point, so Ms. Bloomfield is going to provide both reports.
Okay, perfect. Over to you. Thanks, Ms. Bloomfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, just wait for, is my presentation? It's up there? Oh, perfect. Great. Okay. So yeah, as CAO Newell said, I'm just giving the Solid Waste Department update on behalf of Andrew Reeder. Just a few main things I'm going to touch on. All right, some major projects going on in the solid waste management, the solid waste department right now is the solid waste management plan. It is just beginning the review, and I believe they have retained a consultant to get going on that. The curbside RFP is another big one. I know that the solid waste department is currently working on. They're discussing the approach with all of the member municipalities, and I believe they'll be preparing the RFP to be released in September. One of the other major things that happened in the second quarter was we received the approval for the substituted requirements for the biocover at Campbell Mountain Landfill. So we finally got the approval we've been waiting for probably about 10 years, so it was fabulous. So now the design for the biocover has started. So, and that'll be getting underway, and they'll be starting to do some of the construction work, I believe, in 2024, 2025. So a few other major things that happened in the solid waste department, the new endeavor in taking over operations at the Oliver landfill. And this began, believe this month. And this is just a couple of pictures of some of the equipment that has been acquired to do the operations. The compactor and a loader without its bucket, but and the other major thing for Oliver was the composting facility. It had its grand opening, and will be ready to start receiving yard waste and such in the fall. So that's what I've covered for solid waste. Was there any questions before I move on to the utilities?
I'm not seeing any hands. So go ahead, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so the utilities, we've had a pretty busy quarter, and just going to touch on a few of our main projects right now. The Willowbrook water system, we've been doing design work along Myers Road. And what this will do is this will loop the water system, because right now we have quite a few dead ends on it. So the portion in the solid yellow line is what we're hoping to do construction on this fall. The dotted line is what we're looking for once we receive more funding, probably 2024, 2025, and that will complete the loop. Some other projects we've got going on right now, Naramata water system. We have the 4 dams up above Naramata. We've recently retained our consultant, and they're starting on the various designs that have to be done to raise the berms and inspect the low-level outlets within the dams under the water. And this is just a nice picture of Eleanor Lake there. You can see there's a dam at the north and a dam at the south end of that. The other project we got going is, another one is Falder Water Master Plan. We have done a bunch of data collection and surveyed all of the connections. And now we're working on the water model right now. So one of the big things that we took on was cleaning of the well number 5 in Okanagan Falls water system. I thought it would be interesting to show you guys some pictures, because I don't know how many of you may have actually seen what it kind of looks like, the pump looks like when we bring it up from a well, and what it looks like to clean it. So the picture on the left there is what actually it looked like when we pulled up the casing and the well from the bottom. You can see it's actually cracked, so it was really good timing that we brought it up. But all of the orange there is the iron that has precipitated out and stuck to it. Fortunately, this well isn't very high in iron, but it just shows that even wells that don't have a very high concentration, eventually they will build up. The well there the well pump hadn't been pulled in about 8 years, I believe. So, and the picture on the right, you can see the nice big cleaning brush that we put down the well. And the next pictures shows what we were cleaning. The this is the well screen. This is where the water would come into the bottom of the well. And you can see on the one on the left, this one actually isn't too bad of a picture, but some of it you couldn't even see the actual structure of the screen anymore. But you can see what it looks like before cleaning and then after cleaning, where you can actually see the some of the rocks behind the screen again. And just to show you, this is what the new pump looks like. We've got a crane there lowering it down into the well, and then we would follow with the casing, which encompasses all of the cords and where where the water would get pumped up back to the surface. And the picture on the left there is just what it looks like. The well, all you can see is the little blue bit there right behind the yellow fence. That's the top of our well, the wellhead. And then there's the pump station right beside it. So one of the other projects was the West Bench water system. We installed variable frequency drives in the remaining two pumps in the system. Now, some of you are probably saying, well, what's a variable frequency drive? What does that do? So to put it simply, pumps will either have an on-off, so you start them up and they ramp right up and go full speed. Or you turn them on and the variable frequency drive will slowly ramp up the flow. And that's what you can see in the blue line there. And one of the benefits of having the VFDs is that you can actually work within that operating range. You can slow the VFDs down if you don't have the demand. Instead of shutting off the pump, turning it back on, shutting it off. You can actually ramp down the VFDs. So it's actually a really good thing for pump longevity. So, and also when you turn it off, you don't get that water hammer because the pump slows down slowly as opposed to just cutting off. So now the West Bench system, all of the pumps there have VFDs on them. And a sewer project we're working on is the Okanagan Falls Sewer Master Plan. We've got flow monitoring completed. It did take us a little longer than expected because we were waiting for a rainfall event and it didn't come for quite a while. But then we got a couple of really good ones. So what that does is then we monitor the change in flow from regular to after a rainfall to see how much infiltration of the rainfall we get into the sewer lines. So with that information, we're developing the model and we're anticipating a draft report on it in Q3. And the picture there is just a snip, an aerial shot of where our sewer is in part of Okanagan Falls. So the Naramata Liquid Waste Management Plan is well underway. We got acceptance from the province on stage 1, and we've initiated stage 2. So on July 10th, I know even though it's in third quarter, we just did an open house and we're getting well underway with the plans for that. And essentially the stage 2 is what I like to call the meat and potatoes, basically where you delve into all the options, you discuss all of the different pros and the cons, and you pick the locations and you determine what options that the community would like to go with. So, and that's just a picture of the crowd that gathered at our event at Naramata Center. We have 3 water systems undergoing utility acquisition process right now: Lakeshore Waterworks and Vintage View Sewers. We're anticipating the engineering and financial assessment reports to be completed in late October and bringing some information to the public and the board sometime in November. That'll be the start of it. And for Sage Mesa, we anticipate the report about a month behind in late November and starting some of the public engagement and with the bringing information to the board, probably December or January. So those are well underway. And I just want to end with a good reminder on water conservation. Just to update everybody, all of our RDOS water systems are on a stage 1 restriction. Now, what we're trying to do this year is We're focusing on the percent water reduction. In past years, what we've found is when we go to stage 1, it drops from 3 days a week to 2 days a week. So those 2 days a week are incredibly stressful on the water systems because everybody wants to water as much as they can. So what we're doing is this year, we're staying at the 3 days a week, but we're asking people to reduce the water you use. If you have your timer set for 10 minutes, go to 9 minutes or 8 minutes, just to try and reduce the amount that you're using. If this works well, which we've already seen a difference in the water systems, then we're going to bring in an update and actually update the bylaw, the water regulatory bylaw in the new year. So it's a different approach as opposed to cutting everybody back to 2 days and then 1 day. But we're hoping if the community responds and does this reduction, then this is actually a better way to do it. It's all right. And nobody can allowed to sprinkle on Mondays. So, but it's amazing how many of them we're actually still catching. But yeah, so that's my quarter review, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Director Bush.
Yeah, so this is stage 1. Is that different than the province's stages? Because I think the province has this on stage 3. Like, can you explain the difference?
Sure.
Ms. Bloomfield, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, the province actually has 6 stages, and it is a little different. It's based on the entire watershed. Their levels are a little bit different than ours. We can take those and then we look at our water systems and how we can start working towards those. I know some of them are going to be going up to a stage 4, the provincial level, and we'll probably follow suit with going to a stage 2 water restrictions, which further reduces, is about a 40% reduction in water use. So, but yeah, they are different. We are working on an explanation on our regional connections page because it is confusing for people. So we want to make that really clear, and I've got my project coordinator working on that right now.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. In Asuyas, we're on stage 2, which means 1 day a week. That's different from Oliver that's on stage 2, and that's 2 days a week. So I really think that when we do something about explaining the stages, that we should include everybody in it because it's very confusing.
Thank you. Ms.
But good ideas about the 10%. Thank you.
Thank you. That's probably just more, you're not looking for an answer, hey? You're not looking for an answer or just a comment? Okay, great, thanks. Are there any other questions? I wanted to ask really similar about the communication piece around this, because I think this is an interesting idea and you explained it very well and very simply. Is there a communication piece on this, or is it just to go to regional connections?
For the water conservation?
Yeah.
Yeah, other than just putting out the newsletters when we put out the stage restrictions, we try and explain what we're doing in those. But yeah, if this is what we're going to pursue, we want to get it out there as part of the bylaw update.
Okay.
So we'll make sure that people are aware of it and even get feedback on what they think.
Okay. Thanks. And where are the newsletters? Are they getting mailed in the utility bills or?
We do put bits in the utility bills as they go out, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Any other question? Yeah, go ahead, Director Friedrigo. Oh, thank you. And yeah, go ahead, Director Friedrigo, and then Director Coyne.
Just to follow up with that, will there be any information on Voyant Alert? Is that one way to be able to reach everyone to encourage reduction?
Yeah, Ms. Bloomfield?
Thank you. It's possible, but right now we're still working on the number of people that have the accounts that are in the water systems. We're still trying to make sure that there's enough people signed up for each of the systems that we can cover enough of them for Voyant alerts.
Thank you. Director Coyne.
Yes, thank you. Lisa, when do we expect to be able to go to the public with something on Chain Lake?
Thanks. Go ahead, Ms. Bloomfield.
Thank you. We'll be be able to do something very, very soon. I know the meeting is coming up in the August long weekend, so I'm anticipating having information available next week.
Is there a follow-up, Director Cohen? Okay, great, thanks. Any other questions? Great, thanks, Ms. Bloomfield, that was great. And I think that's everything for us. So I'll call the meeting to end. Can I get a motion for that? First, second, thank you. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Excellent. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Gettens. We'll go back to Director Roberts and he can finish off this morning's meeting. Reopen it and away you go.
Thank you. So I guess we don't need any motion or that to open up the protective services since we just had a delay, right? A recess. I'd like to pass this over to the CAO in regard to our Q2 report.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So really, again, this is just the second meeting after the end of the second quarter. So we're updating committee on what's been going on in Q2 and what's coming in Q3. Perhaps at this time, I'll just give a brief synopsis of what is going on at the Karamias. Oh, sorry, it's sort of between solid waste and protective services. We did have reported 2 mortar shells at the Karamias landfill. We've sent that over to the Canadian Armed Forces bomb unit. They've responded. They're on site now. Typically what they'll do is they'll look at the pictures of it, determine if it might be live or dormant. They believe they were live, but they'll find out for sure when they actually report out after seeing them. The intent is now that they'll dig a pit at the landfill. They'll cover that with sandbags. They'll explode the shells in that pit, thereby mitigating any sort of impact on a nearby community. What they've determined so far is that these are old. They're sort of the Vietnam era. They're much smaller than the mortar shells that are being produced now. So the impact shouldn't be that great. And they don't expect any problem with that, Mr. Chair. And otherwise, I'd just take any questions that anybody may have on protective services.
Okay, is there any questions for the CAO in regards to protective services? Director Holmes.
I'm just wondering if they bring those shells over to Summerland and drop them on that slide area, could solve the problem.
Yeah, we'll treat that as a rhetorical comment.
Yeah, I don't think that was. Does anybody else have any questions for the CAO in regards to Director Gettens?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but is it just because of their age? Is it just somebody, is the idea perhaps that someone just misplaced them? It didn't really, like it wasn't intentional, like this wasn't, there's no agenda behind this? Have they had any discussions around that?
CAO?
No, they don't know where they came from or why. Because they're so old, it could just be somebody house cleaning. You just never know.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing any questions in regards to that. So, okay, so if there's no more questions, and I don't see anything else on our agenda, can I have a motion to close out the protective services? Yes, second, thank you. All in favor? All right, any opposed? Oh, okay, we'll pass it on back to the chair.
Thank you, Director Roberts. We had adjourned this morning's Corporate Services Committee meeting, but I do have a question in regards to the activities report. Do we want to see that back at the next meeting? Or if there's questions, we can deal with them potentially now? I don't know that there was anything, but I'll just ask. Otherwise, we can put it on the agenda if that's at the request of the board for the future meeting. Otherwise, we can't start the corporate or the regular board meeting till 1:45. So there was several things on that agenda. That the moment, the only thing I was thinking that needs to come back is the website presentation. Okay. All right, we got 10 minutes. Fill your coffees, finish your lunch that was rushed. Adam, could I ask that you take us out of practice session if that's what we're in, or get us prepped? We're good to go? Okay, I'll just wait till it hits that 1:45 and get us started. Okay, everybody, if we could make our way back to our seats, we will get started. I'll call the Regional District Okanagan Smilkameen regular board meeting to order. Reminder, this is an opportunity to remove anything from the consent agenda if there's anything that somebody wants to deal with in the regular portion. I see a hand from Director Coyne. Go ahead.
Yeah, article or item A 2.1, temporary use permit application.
Okay, A 2.1.
Yep.
Okay, that will go into the regular portion there. Anything further, Director Taylor?
A 1.1.1.
A
Advisory
1.1.
Planning Commission meetings, minutes.
Okay. We'll move that, pull that. Anything further to come off of consent? Not seeing anything, looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, we'll add the in-camera portion in E5. That's where we'll put it. So with the addition of the in-camera at E5, looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved, seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to consent agenda corporate issues. Looking for a motion to approve that. Moved, seconded, thank you. All in favor? Great. Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda development services. Looking for a motion for that one. Moved, seconded, thank you. All those in favor? Perfect. Any opposed? Again, motion carries. Down to development services. Rural land use matters, B1, electoral HDVP, CAO.
This is an overheight garage in Tulameen, Mr. Chair, and they're requesting a variance to go from 4.5 meters to 6.7 meters. And just because it's a 49% increase over what the bylaw allows, we're recommending that be denied.
Okay, I will go to Director Coyne for direction on this.
Yeah, I'd like to make the alternative recommendation to approve this, and I'll speak to it later.
Okay, so you're moving approval, seconding it. It's on the floor. Discussion. Do you want to speak to it, Director Coyne? Go ahead.
Yes, I went out on Sunday and had a look at this property, and because it rang a lot of bells, it brought a lot of memories back. We have approved multiple overheight dwelling or accessory buildings in that subdivision. And standing in that guy's yard, you can see, I believe it's 5 that are overheights. So it would not be out of character at all to have another one there. The whole subdivision is pretty well overheight buildings, so that's my rationale.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Don't believe I'm seeing any hands. This one is a rural vote. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brings us down to B2, a temporary use permit in electoral area E, CAO.
This is for a vacation rental at Tiller Road in Naramata, Mr. Chair. It's a first-time application. We're recommending it be approved.
And I will go to Director Federico. Direction?
Yeah, I'd like to make the alternate recommendation to deny this TUP, please.
Okay, so you're moving denial. Is there a seconder for that? It is seconded. It's on the floor. Generally, when we have a motion to deny, we ask if the applicant is in the room or online and wants to speak to it. So is there somebody online from the property on Tiller Road? If you could put them through, we'll give them an opportunity to give a brief presentation to the board. And can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Yes,
Yes,
I can.
we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you everybody for considering the application. And I want to thank Fiona, planner, that helped us throughout this process. I want to say it's extremely important for me to respect the voice of our neighbors. And I've read all the letters that they have written regarding wanting to reject this application. If you wouldn't mind, I've actually categorized a few of the primary concerns that were brought up by the neighbors into 4 or 5 different issues that they've raised. The first one being noise. This was something that was brought up by almost all the neighbors. So just for everybody to know, I mean, it's important for me for us to be a good neighbor. So we have explicit messaging telling our guests about noise rules. We've removed all speakers in the house to not allow for loud music. I'm also very specific on the types of guests that we accept. I have on many occasions turned down young groups, people who wanted to use the house for bachelorette parties. I want to cater to a demographic that appreciates Naramata for what it is. And we have given out different phone numbers, including mine and a manager that actually lives a 12-minute drive from Penticton, to be contacted should any of the neighbors have any issues with regards to noise. There was another point that was brought up, that there was a lot of loud noise last year. So last year we actually I didn't do many rentals. That was just more of like a practice period to see how it goes. That was mostly myself, my family, my mom, my aunt, uncle that came from Europe. So most of the time, because the house wasn't even ready it wasn't in any shape to be rented out to guests. So that's what I have to say about noise. I mean, it's a valid concern, but I am taking every possible precaution to make sure that doesn't bother anybody. Another point that was brought up, which is a valid point, is that the house is empty aside from seasonal rentals, and that doesn't bring any value to the community of Naramata outside the summer months. So it's never been my intention to solely use this rental as a short-term rental property. I'm not a professional investor. I don't own any other homes outside 980 Tiller Road. Even I live in Vancouver and I rent. I plan on staying there when it's not booked, especially during the winter months, because I have the opportunity to work remotely. The reason I haven't stayed there last season is because we were doing upgrades on the house. That includes this new septic tank, basically everything that the RDOS had asked us to improve to bring the house up to standards, is what took a lot of time, including a brand new septic tank and then work on the lawn. So in regards to not bringing value, I would say I haven't had a chance to actually show that to the neighbors outside of the summer months, but I have used local contractors, local septic installers, local landscape companies, irrigation companies. And as guests come in and stay, we promote all the local businesses to the guests who stay. We ask them to download the Naramata app. We have, forms for the different wineries around, and every guest that arrives, we actually have a bottle for them from Legend Distilling, and we promote them to go and check it out because they're very close to us. So that would be my point that I wanted to raise to the neighbors and to the board, to say that it's never been my intention to have this just operating as some boutique hotel that doesn't add any value. I love the village of Naramata, and I plan on spending their time myself. Landlord not being present is detrimental to the community of Naramata. That was another point that was brought up by the neighbors. So I think I've addressed that to the best of my abilities. Again, it's not my intention to not be there at all. Yeah, I'll pause here. I know I've been talking a lot. I want to hear if there are any concerns. This is the first time I've ever attended a meeting like this. So I would like to hear if there are any counter arguments, if there's any points that the board wants to bring up, and I'm happy to respond.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'll go to the board. Is there any questions somebody may have for the applicant? Not seeing any hands at the moment. Go ahead, Director Taylor.
Can you just clarify where your agent is? I thought I heard you said something about an agent or property manager.
Yeah, she's in Penticton.
Okay, so they reside in Penticton?
They
Okay.
do reside in Penticton, yeah.
All right, any other questions? Director Federico, go ahead.
Have you had a chance to connect or meet with any of the residents in that community? They are fairly close knit. So just wondering if you have reached out to any of them or your direct neighbors or anyone down the way.
Absolutely. So Lynn is our next door neighbor. We've talked. I mean, she's texted me. I've texted her. We've had hour-long conversations anytime I've been there, including this season. I think the next in front of us, I think, is a gentleman named Rick, who's actually had a tour of the house, and we've had several conversations. I believe the neighbor to our left, like our dogs are friends and they play together all the time. So yes, I mean most of the names in the letters that were sent by the neighbors, I know them and have talked to them.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you for the brief presentation and answering those questions. I'll go back to the board so they can deal with the motion as made at the moment. Any discussion? Director Bush?
So isn't the point of the TUP to give these people a chance, and then because it's temporary, then we, another year, then we know whether it's good or not?
That was the original intent. It's kind of been getting away from that a little bit, but it's a good, valid point. Any further discussion? I see a hand over here. Director Federico, go ahead.
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to connect with the applicant before this, so I mean, he did address a few of the concerns that come from the neighbors. The biggest thing and why I inquired with whether he's spoken with neighbors is because this street is very tight knit. They do all know each other. When I was campaigning, it broke my heart in that area because chatting with neighbors like, oh, so-and-so lives there, so-and-so lives there. And then, they pointed at that house and it's like, that's a vacation rental. So the whole demeanor just completely changes. So that's where the challenge is with this one. Just they're on such a tight knit street. Now, if the applicant he's expressed that he would be there during the winter time where there is concerns with empty houses. He's addressed, he doesn't want to be a boutique hotel, which is also concerns with using big empty houses for commercial use in residential areas. So in this case, I mean, trying for 1 year to see if the applicant's going to follow through with that, then maybe that is something to take into consideration.
Okay, Director Knodel, I see a hand from you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Through the chair, I'm always concerned when we deviate away from our stated policies. It doesn't mean our policies shouldn't be changed, and I'm by no means in favor of homes being bought specifically for this purpose, but this is deviating away from what our stated intentions were. So I'm going to have to kind of side with Director Bush on this one. Thank you.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question actually.
Go ahead,
just
Director
the
Gittins.
chair. So to the director of Area E, which way are you going? I know
Go ahead.
I know it's a really struggle because it is a community, and then you've got somebody coming into a community and they have a commercial and a drive for money. And so I am like, that community.
Director Federico, I'll throw it back to you.
Thanks. Again, it's hard to say. I mean, he did, eloquently address the concerns that the neighbors have, and he has spoken with the neighbors. There's a lot of opposition from those residents. So at this time, just because it is such a tight-knit community, there's others on those street who rent out their homes full-time to people, and they could have the same opportunities to rent them out as TUPs, and they don't. They've taken that time, that consideration to rent them out full-time. So I think just for the character of that community and the residents that are there, my feeling still just to stay with denying it, just because of the tight-knit community that they have in that quiet neighborhood.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing no, Director Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you, and to the chair. It seems like the person had spent quite a amount of time meeting the obligations of the RDOS and dealing with staff to meet all the obligations. Do we know whether or not there's that's coming from the landowner? Is that also the interpretation from staff?
My suspicion is it wouldn't be here if they hadn't met the obligations, but we can clarify that with CAO.
Yes, they met our requirements, Mr. Chair, under the OCP.
Okay. Last chance for discussion. Go ahead, Director Gettins.
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor with the director on this. I know, we keep coming back to the TUP and the VRBOs, and it's always a fine balance when there is a community desire and then there's somebody that has a different desire for that community, and that is a financial gain for them to make this living. The community that you're talking about sounds like it's quite small, very close together. They like knowing each other. They like the neighbors. I think if anybody's lived near an Airbnb or a VRBO, you know that is a different demographic in your home for a week. And try as you might, you can't always control the people who are going to stay there. So I think there's some work there to be done. I appreciate the complexity and why this decision is hard, but this is a really tough one. And I feel for you, but I feel for the neighbors that are there all year round as well.
Keith, and then Director Roberts.
And through the chair, I agree with Director Gettins as well. We see TUPs that come forward with no feedback, right? That's the neighborhood has accepted it. They're okay with it being in that location. I do believe the error is in our OCPs when we give TUPs the green light to go. And I feel that we need to look at resident feedback. And when we have resident feedback, we need to listen. They've taken the time. How many haven't taken the time because they don't believe that we listen? So when we have resident feedback, we need to listen. So I am listening.
Director Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. Kind of a question here, because again, Area E has its OCP being reviewed or finishing reviewed. Has there been more definite breakdowns in regards to your differential of communities, what they like and what they don't like? Again, this is me who's new to having an OCP himself and trying to learn to move better at creating a more succinct document. Thank you.
Director Federico.
Yes, thank you for that. I did ask staff if this particular street could be flagged in our OCP to not have vacation rentals, because right now staff are encouraging to wait with OCP amendments and information like that until the vacation rental review is done. My OCP review committee has asked for there to be tenants on site. They want specific rules just for Naramata because they're like, they don't understand why we have to wait for this review for doing our OCP right now. And this has been expressed by many in the community to have somebody on site. So if the community right now could put it in our OCP and that was supported, they would strongly discourage the empty houses and have have someone on site. And I would strongly support for this particular road and community to not have full house TUPs.
Director Knodel.
Thank you. And through the chair, we seriously need to look at changing our policies then. It's terribly unfair to people who go through all the motions to be all of a sudden derailed because of something they can't measure. We need measurable consistency, and doing it like this is terribly unfair to the people who are doing the undertaking. So down the road, we better look at getting this corrected because the way we're doing it is terribly wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'm going to call the question. I'd seen that he had the one opportunity. We generally don't give a second, so we'll stay consistent with that. Director Gettens.
Yeah, can you just confirm the motion that's on the table, please?
The motion is to deny the application. So everybody's clear. This again is a rural vote. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Those opposed? Directors Bush, Knodel, and Pendergraft opposed. Motion still carries. Down to B3, zoning and community plan amendment in Area F, CAO.
This is an application for a subdivision, Mr. Chair. It's taking a little bit more than 11 hectare parcel to divide into 3 lots. It's currently zoned resource area and designated resource area in the OCP, going from resource area to small holding, large holding, based on the size of the proposed lots. It's not in the regional growth strategy as a growth area, and typically a resource area zoning requires 20 hectares. So already undersized, and it is in the Trout Community Watershed, which we've had many discussions on. So we're recommending that the application to amend the official community plan and the zoning bylaw be denied.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll go to Director Gettens, please. Go ahead.
Thanks,
for
the
direction.
chair. I will move the administrative recommendation to deny the application.
Okay, you're moving it, seconded. It's on the floor. That generally gives us an opportunity to ask the applicant if they wish to address the board. If you could come up, and the little button in the center of that turns on that green light and you're ready to go.
Thank you, Chair. When we initially applied for this application, there's a provision in the Regional Growth Strategy Bylaw, the RDOS document, as well as the OCP. I'd just like to read some of those out right now. Electoral Area F is predominantly rural area made up of 2 principal settlement areas: the more residential Greater West Bench area and the more rural agricultural area of Falder Meadow Valley. Both areas value their rural and semi-rural characters, but will consider limited growth subject to maintaining the character of these areas. So that's the OCP document. It also clearly states in that OCP document of the broad goals, section 5.2.1, residential development and housing provide an opportunity for limited new growth and housing options for all age groups while ensuring new housing developments maintain maintain the area's rural, residential, and agricultural character. So obviously, when we were initially reading those statements in the OCP before we drafted our argument to planning, we felt that we were on the right track with taking a piece of land that is sort of hemmed in by Crown land to the west and rural residential development on the east. This piece of property looks like a perfect candidate for infill. Currently, the way it's zoned, we're allowed to have up to 3 residences on the property already. Because of its size, being 11 hectares, we can have a primary residence and 2 secondary residences. As a result of that, we could drill up to 3 wells and pull as much water out of the ground for residential purposes as we like and not have to ask anybody to do that, because we have a right to 2,000 liters of water per person per day in this province. There was a Falder zoning review that was done recently. As part of that Falder zoning review, the regional district spent $125,000 on a study. The conclusions of this study are as follows. These were presented to planning. In I think it was this time last year, August of last year. And it stated that there was no need to limit residential groundwater use in the Trout Creek sub-aquifer region, which is exactly where our property is located. Supplementary to that, we hired our own hydrogeologist to verify the findings of that study and propose his own findings. And he came up with the exact same conclusion, that the drawdown effects from 3 residential wells in our area would be minimal to negligible. So I'm asking the board now, if we can already go onto the property and drill 3 wells, and suck all the residential water out of the ground that we'd like, and build 3 houses without having to ask anybody for any favors to do that, how could it possibly be the appetite of the board to deny a 3-lot subdivision that would essentially allow for the same thing? So now, planning, when I posed that question to planning at the advisory planning committee meeting 10 days ago, the response was, well, the applicant could in theory have up to 7 residences on the property after rezoning went through. So I guess my proposal to the board is maybe we could strike a bit of a negotiation here. Maybe you could approve my rezoning under the pretenses that there's a caveat there to the amount of residential development that we could do on the property, and limit it to the 3 primary residences. That was a suggestion that was given to us by the chair of the advisory planning committee. After the meeting was over, he came up and spoke to me right over here in the foyer and said, maybe that's something that you can present to the board as a compromise to this. It seems to me that if we have engineers whose livelihood it is to preside over matters like this, saying that there's no need for concern in the area, it seems a little ridiculous that we're basing everything off of water consumption in the area and saying no to much needed residential development that would generate high quality construction jobs in the area and more available housing. I don't really know what else to say besides that. I'm a lifelong Summerland resident. The planning department said something in their last correspondence, which I thought was a little shocking. They said that the applicant hadn't proven an appropriate level of need for such a subdivision and development in the area. And I wonder if the board feels that that is, I guess, an accurate representation of how this organization thinks, that we don't need any more housing in the area. I don't know how anybody working in a planning department currently in this country could have an opinion like that after all of the work that we've done in our professional reports and the rationale supplied. So I'm obviously, I would love a fraction of the amount of dialogue on this topic that you gave to a temporary use permit in the previous applicant. Just a fraction of the dialogue, because last time we presented, we didn't have a single question. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, I'll go to the board. Is there any questions for the applicant? Director Fedrigo first, and then over to oh, you're pointing that way. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I guess then if you can have 3 more houses, why the push for the subdivision?
The push for the subdivision is, obviously we want to have who's ever buying the houses the ability to have their own title. That seems really important. I would imagine that you would probably want to have your own title on a piece of property that you owned and not have to have a shared title assembly.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? I seen a hand, Director Coyne. Junior, go ahead.
You mentioned like a notice on title or covenant or whatever to say that those properties would never be allowed to develop more than one dwelling on it. Is that something that you'd be interested, like you'd be willing to cooperate with?
Absolutely, Director Coyne. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because of the cleanliness of all of the reports that we got back from our qualified professionals that we engaged on this project, as well as just their credentials, to not have a single red flag come back in our environmental assessment or from our hydrology assessment, it seems like if there isn't a negotiation to be struck and a restrictive covenant to be signed, then my wife and I would absolutely entertain that, being that we can already have the 3 residences on the property and 3 wells.
Okay. Director Roberts, I seen a hand from you, I believe. Go ahead.
Thank you, the chair. I actually was going to ask the same question as Director Coyne. I guess I could ask another question, is if this is new information in regards to the discussion of having a caveat, is there an appetite from the board in regards to just deferring while the discussion, if there's room for compromise or not? Just a question, thanks.
Okay. Director Gettens?
I think to answer that question, I think we have to recognize that accessory dwellings are not primary residence. That's a big difference. So that's why a lot of people have this ability to put on an accessory dwelling and they don't, because it doesn't make sense to have 2 principal residents or have a principal residence larger than your current one. The current application, the way it is, does allow for up to 7 if the zoning did go through. More importantly than that, this property was purchased as a rezone area zoning, and you were aware of the zoning when you purchased the property. There is an OCP, there is a rural growth strategy. There are studies that do conflict with the one that the applicant paid for. There's no community support from this. I don't have any community letters of support unless they're going to gain from this transaction. We spent an incredible amount of time on the Trout Creek Aquifer study, the Folder zoning study. You had citizens in here who have been living out there for decades saying, we already had the zoning to subdivide, and we chose not to because we've got concerns about water. So what another member on the APC also said was maybe now is not the time. There's maybe not enough information to prove the difference between the 2 different studies to be something that we can actually rely on. But the community is not saying this is okay. The community is not saying it. And that's really important because rural areas do matter. And that's why we have a policy that protects rural areas so that they all know what they're living in and what they're moving into. That's why we have the rural growth strategy. That's why we have an OCP, which was only completed in 2018. So to the question about the caveats, I don't even know if we can do that. I don't know the work that goes on behind that. It would definitely warrant another community conversation. So the application that we have here now, I think CAO, you might have to advise on this, but we have to wrap up this application or this and what we're doing here. But this will not go quickly because it's another community conversation. And we've already told this community we're listening. That's why we're doing these studies. So just, I guess the point of that is an accessory dwelling is not a principal dwelling. That's not the intention.
Okay. It isn't an opportunity to debate with them though.
No, I don't have a single negative representation on my file currently from anybody in the community on this.
Okay.
Just adding.
Good point. Any other questions of the applicant? Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, we thank you for the brief presentation. If you can take a seat back in the gallery, we will discuss it as a board. We have the motion on the floor. I go to Director Federico first.
Thank you. This is possibly a staff question. So I attended the APC meeting because it was before ours and I was genuinely interested and there was some good conversation. If staff can confirm that this parcel's in an environmentally sensitive development permit and watercourse development permit area, as well as a wildlife habitat steep slope area and one that is being advised to be protected.
Can you answer those for us, Shannon?
Yes, so a majority of the property is within an environmentally sensitive development permit area, predominantly kind of as you go towards the south of the property. There is a very small portion of the property within a watercourse development permit area as well, though I did note in the environmental assessment that the QEP did note that there is no longer one on the property. So that is something that we would require confirmation on typically when we do receive a watercourse development permit kind of inquiry, where that would typically be required. With respect to steep slopes, the property does contain portions of 30 to 40% steep slopes, as well as areas which are over 40%. So.
Okay. I thought I'd seen another hand. Director Coyne, go ahead.
Yeah, so my questions are to staff. I guess the first is, currently, can he put 3 houses on that property?
On the existing zoning?
Yes, so he would be entitled by zoning 1 principal dwelling unit as well as 2 accessory dwellings. So that could be in the form of 1 secondary suite or 1 accessory dwelling or just 2 accessory dwellings.
And those dwellings could have their own individual wells?
We don't really cap necessarily the wells that you would be using to service those dwelling units. So that's correct.
So technically he could. And the other question to staff is, so knowing this, that he can add up to those 3, if we were, I'm just exploring everything here, so I don't get a vote on this. If he was to sign a restrictive covenant that says that they can only have those 3, one dwelling per unit or per lot with, as he's allowed right now with those wells, then that would be the same as what he's got now, correct?
Like in terms of like long-term impact or?
Yeah, I mean, right now he can put 3 dwellings on, right? Whether it's the main house and 2 accessories, he can put in three septic tanks, 1 for each one of them, and he can put in 3 wells for each individual dwelling. And there's nothing right now, he could do that without us saying anything on that. But if we got him to sign put a restrictive covenant on the land that says there's 1 dwelling, 1 well, no further development, then that would restrict to that, right?
Go ahead.
Potentially, though, I would say that I don't believe we have the jurisdiction to cap necessarily the number of wells that someone could establish on their property. I do believe that falls under provincial jurisdiction.
Most likely correct, yeah.
So I'm confused then,
Well,
because
go ahead. You could restrict the number of homes, but not the number of wells.
so isn't the whole opposition here then, I'm just confused. So if the whole opposition is around the aquifer, right now he can put as many wells as he wants on there, and there's nothing we can do? Is that what I'm understanding here?
CAO?
Can I just say, it's tough to speculate on these matters, Mr. Chair. Like right now, we have an application for a 3-lot subdivision. That's what we're dealing with. If there was some other matter that the board wanted to have the applicant or the applicant wanted to explore, we're going to reserve on that, and we'll deal with an application when we get it.
Okay. Director Roberts, or? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. Isn't the difference, like, for instance, secondary dwellings, don't we have like a cap on the amount of a square footage? I'm pretty sure that it's different than the primary dwelling.
Generally is, but I'll ask Mr. Wong.
That's correct. So you would be able to build up to 125 square meters per accessory dwelling.
Okay. Director Gettens?
Thanks to the board. So the intention of an accessory dwelling is different than the intention of a subdivision. So this is a side by property, a second property that was purchased beside an original property that had the right zoning. He didn't have to come to this table to get a rezoning. There with that zoning that he purchased on the one lot was available. He's already got that. I think it's subdivided already. This is the adjacent lot. It's also adjacent to the Felder water system. I don't think we need to remind the board how fragile that water system is. So that is the purpose of an accessory dwelling, is that it's not meant to be a title, it's not meant to be like a primary home. It could be farm labor, it could be for your in-laws or whatever. So again, I appreciate the CAO's comment that that's not what this application is. I don't know what we can negotiate at the board table. I would suggest nothing. I think that's a job that we can talk with staff and they can follow the legislation on that. This application has no support. It's not supported by a rural growth strategy policy, the OCP, the zoning, and the community. The APC said no. They said no to the previous one as well. There are concerns about the water out there and that people are not interested in entertaining this. If we're going to change the policy for one area to allow this, then we got to redo this as a policy for all, not on a case-by-case basis. We've done that just recently. We just looked at this for the past few years. So it's not supported. And that's the difference between buying a property for a development and buying a property and putting on a mortgage help or an in-law suite. One's more money and one's for your family. That's the difference.
Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, again, this one is a rural vote. I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Director Bush opposed. Motion does carry. The application would be denied. B4, soil removal and deposit bylaw amendment, electoral area F, CAO.
Sorry, this is the property owner that wants to demolish a house and rebuild, and it contradicts the soils bylaw up in area F. So we're looking for an amendment to the soil bylaw to allow for them to exceed that 170 square meters of soil on the property, Mr. Chair. We're recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Go to Director Gettens.
I'll move the administrative recommendation, please.
Okay, mover seconded. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Director Gettens, go ahead.
Thanks. We talked about this a little bit earlier too with the letter, and that this soil removal and deposit bylaw, it can seem like a really ridiculous bylaw for a reasonable request. And we are in that testing period. I don't know if the letter was from anyone that's in the audience right now or if it's the same one, but I just wanted to recognize this is something new. There was something that had to be done in Area F. We were seeing a lot of commercial dumping in the property, and I know that's not what this is for. So I just wanted to acknowledge the letter and say that we appreciate that. We are looking over this again, but yeah, we're trying to find that good balance between regulation and being reasonable as well. So, which is why I'm definitely going with the administrative recommendation.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing no hands, again, oh, this one is a corporate vote. So I'll check with Ms. Molden, is that correct?
This is an amendment, excuse me, to a regulation bylaw. Oftentimes that is a corporate, but it does fit under the planning, part 14, so it would be a rural vote.
Okay, so we can class this one as a rural vote. With that in mind, all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Zoning bylaw amendment in electoral area C. And this one I believe is from the public hearing this morning. CAO.
Yeah, this is to allow for the continued operation of an eating and drinking establishment in an agricultural zone, Mr. Chair, and this is back for third reading.
Okay, I'll go to Director Knodel. Direction on this one?
I'd be moving the administrative recommendation. This business has proven itself very beneficial to all the agricultural undertakings in our area.
Okay, I see a seconder for it, so it's on the floor. Discussion? Gosh, quiet here now. All right. Again, a rural vote. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now I think we go to the couple of items that were removed off the consent agenda. So A1.1.1, I believe that was Director Taylor. Do you want to give us a brief?
Yeah, I just feel that we need to review the wording of the motion, 3.1, and then the last one, because I think we are missing a word in there.
So it's a wording thing in there?
Yeah.
So maybe we should just defer
Yeah.
this one, or should we receive it as amended or as corrected?
No, I'd like them to correct it, or somebody needs to listen to the tape. Because I think we're saying the exact opposite of what we're trying to say in there.
So for clarity, are we discussing the electoral area D APC minutes from June 12th?
APCD.
Yeah, so those should go back to that committee for discussion. I wouldn't.
APC.
Yeah, I would, okay, yeah. So are you proposing to make an amendment here to them?
He just wants to make sure they're correct. So
yeah,
maybe you should take it back to the APC and just double check it.
That's fine by me. Yeah.
So defer it till the next meeting, or that you guys can have.
Yeah.
You'll make the motion to defer.
Okay, I'll make the motion to defer.
Okay, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. A2.1, who took that one off? Director Coyne, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make an alternative recommendation that we send that to the APC, please.
Okay, seconded. Any further discussion on that? Seeing no hands, call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to community services, C1.
What just happened? Sorry, that's not regarding our application, so we're confused.
It's going to the APC, the area APC, the Area Planning Commission. So you'll be notified as to when the next meeting is, and it's the planning group for the local area that you'll present to them, or have an opportunity to present to them what you're planning to do. So, okay. And I'm sure Ben behind you there will be happy to explain it. So. Community services, C1, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, looks like a grant, CAO.
This is for permission to submit an application for a grant, Mr. Chair. It's a shared application for Summerland, Princeton, Karamias, and the regional district. And this is an annual grant that comes out to the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, and it's more or less for improvements in Emergency Operations Center and equipment for that part of our organization. So we're recommending that this be submitted, and as an obligation for the CEPF application, you have to agree to manage the funds, and that has to be in the resolution. So we're recommending in favor of both of those, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there direction from the board on this? You're moving it, I'm assuming, Director Bush, seconded, perfect. Any discussion on this? Fairly straightforward. Again, this one is a corporate vote, weighted, so if it gets close, we'll count the weights. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Don't need to count weights. It carries. Thank you. Down to finance. Purchase of 2 water tenders in the Anarchist Mountain Fire Department and the Willowbrook Fire Department, CAO.
We went out at the same time on these, Mr. Chair, and this is a joint award for Anarchist Mountain and Willowbrook to First Truck Freightliner in the amount of $293,280.
Okay. Director Knodel, as this is one of yours, are you ready to move that one?
Administrative recommendation, please. Thank you.
Okay, moved, seconded, thank you. Any discussion on this? Fairly straightforward. Again, a corporate vote, another weighted one. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. D2, Area I Reserve Expenditure, CAO.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this is out of the Growing Communities Fund, and this is for electoral area I, and it's for $100,000 for the Apex Fire Rescue Infrastructure and $100,000 for Clean Volunteer Firefighting. And we're recommending that this be given first, second, third, and adopted, Mr. Chair.
Go to Director Monteith. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to make the administrative recommendation, please.
So you're moving it, seconded, it's on the floor. I think this is our first actual expenditure of these funds, so the rest of us got to get our act together. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, again, a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carried. D3, another reserve expenditure, this time from the Vermilion Forks Reserve and for the Tulamina District Volunteer Fire Department, CAO.
Yeah, this is Area H, Mr. Chair, and it is for the fire department, just general equipment like SCBAs and other necessary firefighting equipment. We're recommending this be given with a regulated reserve. You have to take it out by bylaw. So we're recommending this be given first, second, third reading and adoption.
Okay, I'll go to Director Klein. Oh, we're not mute. We're still muted there.
Oh.
There we are.
I'd like to make the administrative recommendation, please.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on this one? Another one fairly straightforward. And again, it's corporate. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. D4, Missoula Lake Property Owners Association Grant, CAO.
This is also the Vermilion Forks Community Forest Corp Reserve Fund, and this is for $10,000 to the Missoula Lake Property Owners Association to help upgrade a 5-ton fire truck. And we're recommending first, second, third, and adoption on this, Mr. Chair.
Again, I'll go to Director Coyne.
And I'd like to recommend the administrative recommendation again, please.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none. Again, corporate. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Grant to the Hayes Creek Fire Association, CAO.
Same thing, Mr. Chair. It's Vermilion Forks Community Forest Reserve. And this is to for $20,000 to Hayes Creek to help upgrade a fire truck for them. First, second, third, and adoption.
Again, Director Coyne.
And we'll recommend that one again, please.
Second.
Okay, you're moving it and it's seconded. It's on the floor. Any discussion on this one? Again, seeing none. This is corporate. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Down to legislative services. This is the board procedures bylaw, CAO.
Yeah, this is just a update some sections of that bylaw, Mr. Chair, and to bring us into some sections of legislation that have changed. And we're recommending that this be given first, second, and third reading and adopted, and it does require a special resolution.
Okay. Direction from the board on this? Someone prepared to move this? Moved, saying thank you. Seconder? Great. Any discussion? Gosh, seeing no hands. Again, this one is a corporate vote. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That gets that 2/3 majority easily. Building bylaw amendment, E2, CAO.
Yeah, this is to bring our building bylaw into conformance with the Farm Building Code of Canada. Right now, we have some restrictive sections in ours that isn't in the Farm Building Code. So this is to remove a requirement for a 6-month limit on building permit enforcement, and also to remove the
Size restriction.
yeah, the 600 square meter size restriction on farm buildings, and we're recommending first, second, third, and adoption on that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, someone prepared to move this one? It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? I do see Mr. Petrie in the room if there was any questions by the board for him on this. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, making it easier. So I'm going to call the question. Again, a corporate vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Again, the motion carries. Down to E3, a potential meeting date cancellation, CAO.
Yeah, we do pass a motion at the start of each year, Mr. Chair, to set meeting dates to meet our regulatory requirements for advertising those meetings to the public. And we did discuss whether we wanted to, what we wanted to do with the meeting that typically falls during that UBCM week. So we need to make a decision on this as UBCM is coming up. We're recommending the meeting be canceled. But I understand there's other options out there that the board may want to consider.
Yeah, I think that was circulated recently. I'll go to Director Gettens.
Yeah, I just sent that as a consideration, that rather than canceling the meeting and having 4 weeks in between board meetings, if there's an opportunity to have a third meeting in August and still do that every other week, and then push the September 7th meeting to the 14th, which is the second 2 weeks, and then we're only 3 weeks in between. I know it's complicated, which is why I emailed everybody ahead of time. But basically, it shortens the window between board meetings from 4 weeks to 3 weeks. I think sometimes with a 3-week window, sometimes it's nice. I'm sure the staff kind of like that extra week to kind of get caught up on things and everything as well. But it can be a long time for citizens to have 4 weeks. So, which is why I'm proposing just keep going every other week, just have an extra one in August.
Okay, so a direction from the board. Director McCordoff.
Can I speak? I'll speak to that before there's a motion made.
Sure.
I was looking at what we're doing in Osoyoos, and because we don't have as many meetings in the summertime because of staff holidays and people having company and that type of thing, and not as much business. So we have 3 weeks between one this month and the middle of August, and then we have 4 weeks between the one in middle of August to the middle of September. So I'm okay with the way it's set up here, because I think that that to me, that's just a normal way of doing things in the summertime, and there isn't as much. So I'm okay with what's proposed. Thanks.
By the proposed to cancel?
Yeah.
Okay. Director Holmes?
Yeah, so I'm okay with what's being proposed as well. I mean, again, in Summerland, we meet every 3 weeks anyway, and we'll be canceling a meeting. So that means we'll go 6 weeks between a meeting. I don't know how we're going to manage that. But I think unless the chair and the CAO, figure there's too much of a workload and we need to get another meeting in there, I think that's your judgment, because you'll know the workload that the board's going to have coming up. But I would think, any catching up we might need to do, we can just make our regular meetings a little, an hour longer. If we end at, we often end at 3 o'clock or whatever anyway. If it means we have to end at 4 o'clock for a few meetings, then, so be it, right? So I'm okay with canceling that meeting.
Okay. My suspicion is there's never anything that would be on there's always something that could go on an agenda, but I'm not sure it's going to be excessively busy right then. It's hard to always say from month to month. So if we want a direction, someone want to make a motion, either cancel or rejig them. Director Coyne, go ahead.
I'll make the recommended motion.
To cancel? Okay, moved, and I seen a seconder. Any discussion on it? I think cases have been made, both sides. Call the question, obviously, corporate vote. So all those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Director Bush, surprise. All right, that one carries. E4, Emergency Management Working Group Appointments. CAO?
That is to Vice Chair Coyne, Mr. Chair.
So I'll go to Director Coyne.
So we got some people who were interested. We had two more interested than what we need, so we have a couple options. We can make the extra people alternates, or we can just add two extra spots to the committee if the board so chooses. So there's Director Roberts, myself, Director Taylor, Director Coyne Senior, and Director Monteith as who all showed interest for the board positions. And then we have Maureen Parsley of ESS Princeton, Bonnie Bordas is from ESS Summerland. And then we have three fire chiefs that are interested as well. Chief Woodford from Tulameen, Chief Lanella from Willowbrook, and Chief Smith from Naramata. So we can either vote, or we can make them alternates, or we can just add all of them to the committee, depending on what the board wants. We can adjust our terms. I have no problem with adding the extra two positions. So up to you guys.
Okay, I see a hand from Director Knodel. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. That doesn't make such a large working group that two more would damage it. So I don't see a problem there.
Okay. Someone prepared to make a motion, Director Weeb?
I can't hear you.
Okay, so appoint all of those mentioned to the committee. Is the motion moved and seconded? Thank you. Any discussion on that? Maybe before I move on, I'll just confirm those board members are prepared to sit on it. Okay, sounds good. Any further discussion? Is that a leftover hand, Director Knodel, or? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us down to E5, where we were going to put the in-camera portion of the meeting. So if we can ask Adam to put us in camera and give you a job to kick out those that shouldn't be here.